The lantern light danced across Eleanor Hayes' face as she pressed the damp cloth to the stranger's bleeding arm. His eyes, sharp and unyielding like a Montana hawk's, locked onto hers. Outside, the wind howled through the pines around her isolated cabin near Silver Creek, but inside, the tension was thicker than the January blizzard. "You ought to hand me over, ma'am," Luke Harlan whispered, his voice gravelly from the trail. "There's a $1,500 reward for my head." Eleanor's pulse quickened. She knew this man was a killer to one who'd hit the Union Bank in Billings last month, leaving 2 guards dead in the dust. Yet her hands shook not from terror, but from a spark she hadn't felt since burying her husband a decade ago. The cloth slipped from her fingers. Beyond the frosted panes, she heard the faint echo of Ryder Sheriff Wade, Garrett's men, still on the hunt. Luke's rough hand brushed hers in the dim glow. What happens when a proper widow risks everything for the West's most wanted outlaw? And when justice closes in, will she choose her hard-earned respect or the fire in her veins? Eleanor Hayes had laid her husband, Samuel, to rest 10 years back, along with any notion of passion. At 55, she'd settled into the quiet dignity expected of a widow in 1882 Silver Creek, Montana. Folks saw her as the epitome of virtue, hair neatly pinned, dresses high-necked, head bowed at church meetings. They didn't know her wilder days before Samuel tamed her into respectability. That stormy night, as snow piled against the cabin walls, Eleanor mended a quilt by the hearth. The pounding at the door came fierce and desperate. No sane traveler braved this weather. She cracked it open to find him, tall as a lodgepole pine, hair matted with ice and grit, blood staining his wool coat at the bicep. His gaze pierced her like a bullet. "Ma'am, I'm hurt bad." She should have bolted the door, yelled for help. Instead, she let him in. Luke Harlan collapsed at her table, trailing red on the pine floor. She'd heard whispers of him in the mercantile, the Billings heist gone bloody, civilians caught in the crossfire. "Sit still," she ordered, her tone firmer than her nerves as she boiled water and fetched linen strips. Eleanor snuck a look at him. Even wounded, he exuded a rugged power that dried her throat. His broad frame tested the seams of his shirt. As she peeled back the fabric, her fingertips grazed his skin, sending a jolt through her. "You recognize me," he stated flatly. "Yes, and I'm patching you up anyway." She'd forgotten the thrill of being seen as a woman, not just a relic of loss. "What's your tale, Mrs. Hayes?" Luke asked as she worked, ignoring the flinch of his muscles under her touch. "Eleanor Hayes. And I don't have one. Everyone does. A fine woman like you. Out here alone? There's history." Her movements paused. "A woman like you, not a saintly widow, but alive." "I wasn't always a miner's wife," she confessed softly. Luke's interest sharpened, but hoofbeats interrupted, torches flickering through the storm. "Garrett's posse," he muttered. "They've trailed me for days." Eleanor's heart raced. Harboring him would shatter her standing in town. But seeing him struggle to rise, pain etched on his face, she decided. The storm cellar behind the larder. "Hide." Luke's grip on her arm was firm, his thumbs circling her wrist. "Why risk it?" She met those piercing eyes, feeling a forbidden hunger awaken. "I don't know," but she did. The riders passed, Sheriff Garrett's bark cutting the gale. "He's bleeding out, won't last far." When silence returned, Eleanor helped Luke upstairs. His torn shirt revealed a torso marked by battle scars from knives, bullets, the brutal West. "You could have cashed in," he said. "I don't want blood money." "Then what do you want?" The air crackled. Eleanor, flushed, she craved life, desire, the gaze of a man who saw her fire, not her sorrow. But she murmured, "Rest." The storm's worsening. That night, she gave him Samuel's old clothes and the main bed. She tossed in the spare room, picturing his strong form, his hands on her. Morning brought a foot of snow. Trails were buried. Luke couldn't flee, and Eleanor didn't pray for clear skies. She carried breakfast up, He stood bare-chested at the window, scanning for threats. His back was a canvas of violence whip marks from prison, gouges from brawls. "Like what you see?" he teased without turning. She blushed, but held her ground. "Maybe." He faced her, his stare igniting her core. This was peril beyond Outlaw's crossing into forbidden territory. For 4 weeks, the blizzards locked them in Eleanor's cabin. For weeks of lingering looks, brushes that lingered too long. For weeks where Eleanor rediscovered her body's yearnings beneath her prim facade. Luke pitched in, splitting logs with precise swings that drew her to the window. His muscles rippled under flannel. When he caught her watching, his smirk was wicked. "Enjoying the view, Mrs. Hayes?" She spun away, warmth pooling inside. The woodpile needs tending. But they knew better. Evenings by the fire were agony, Luke sharpening his knife, Eleanor knitting, silence heavy with want. Fingers tangled passing tea, sparks flying. "Tell me about your past," he urged one night. "Before this proper life." Her yarn halted. No one in Silver Creek knew. "What makes you think there was a before?" "The sway in your step, the heat in your eyes." "You weren't born a widow." Eleanor shivered at his husky tone. "I sang. In saloons up in Helena. The kind that kept cowboys tossing coins." Luke leaned in. "I'd have emptied my pockets to hear you. When had a man last made her feel wanted? That was ages ago. Not so long." He rose, closing the distance. "Sing for me now. Luke, please. Show me the real you." On shaky legs, she stood. No melody but the wind. Yet she hummed low, her hands tracing her curves, her hips moving as in her youth. Luke watched transfixed. As she neared, his arm encircled her waist. "Stunning," he breathed. "So damn stunning." Inches apart, she smelled leather, smoke, and him. She should have retreated, clung to propriety. Instead, she closed the gap. His kiss was fierce, claiming. Eleanor melted, clutching his shirt. No gentle peck, this was raw need after years of emptiness. Gasping apart, Luke rasped, "I should ride out before this complicates things." "It's already complicated." Her fingers mapped his scars. "Stay." That night, she guided him to her bed, hers, not Samuel's. Luke's touch was tender yet urgent, unbuttoning her gown in the firelight. Eleanor felt desired, vibrant. He explored her with lips and hands, banishing a decade of solitude. As he hovered above, "Look at me," he commanded. She did, lost in his intensity. This was more than flesh souls intertwining, vulnerable and fierce. After tangled in sheets, "What now?" she whispered. "I don't know, but no regrets." None for her either. But paradise was fleeting. One crisp February dawn, Eleanor hung wash when Mrs. Ellis trudged up on her mule, eyes narrowed like a judge. "Morning, Eleanor." Heard noises from your place, voices, chopping. Eleanor's stomach nodded. "Just muttering to myself. Loneliness, you know. Oomph. That's a mighty stack of wood." Samuel could barely manage half, and he was built like an ox. Inside, Luke listened, revolver ready. One slip and blood would spill. Hired a drifter for chores cash under the table. But Mrs. Ellis spotted men's breeches on the line, oversized for any boy. Curious, she sniffed. Very curious. As she left, Eleanor knew the net tightened. Lawmen circled. Choices loomed between heart and survival. That night, Luke held her tight. "Whatever comes," he murmured, "you revived me in ways deeper than hiding." But at daybreak, Hank Dawson burst in. Eleanor was in Luke's embrace when the door splintered. The bounty hunter loomed, shotgun leveled at Luke's bare back. "Well, looky here," Dawson sneered, chewing tobacco. Luke Harlan, caught bare as a babe. Luke shielded her, groping for his pistol. But Dawson kicked it away. "Hands up, Romeo." Eleanor clutched the quilt, humiliated, terrified. This ruined everything: reputation, freedom. "She's innocent," Luke growled. Dawson's cackle chilled. "Innocent? Harboring you for a month? That's aiding a felon 3 years in the pen." Eleanor's world iced over. 3 years? She'd be pushing 60 on release if she endured. Please, she begged. I'll match the bounty triplet. $1,500 from the posters for $1,500 from me. Dawson feigned thought. Tempting, but my name's gold. Can't let word spread Hank Dawson's bought by an outlaw's floozy. Luke lunged, but Dawson swung the barrel to her temple. Move, and her brains decorate the walls. For once, Luke looked broken, not fearing death, but her loss. What'll it take? Simple. Come quietly. I omit the widows. Hospitality. Fight. And every paper from here to Denver blasts how prim Eleanor Hayes warmed her winter. Checkmate. Luke dressed slowly, eyes pleading with hers. Eleanor. I know, she whispered through tears. Dressed, hands up, Dawson prodded him out. At the threshold, Luke whirled, slamming into Dawson. The hunter reeled. Luke dove for his gun. A blast echoed. Luke crumpled, blood blooming on his side, not lethal, but crippling. Dawson loomed, pistol smoking. Told you not to play hero. Eleanor rushed over, staunching the flow. Don't you leave me, she hissed. Luke squeezed her hand, slick red. Had to try. For you. Dawson cuffed him. Touching. Now march. As they hauled him off, Luke yelled, Remember you saved me. Days later, Sheriff Garrett knocked. Eleanor had scoured bloodstains, torched their sheets, erasing traces. Ma'am, questions about Harlan. She met his eyes coolly. Sheltered a hurt stranger in the storm. Sheriff. That's all. He scrutinized her. Dawson had held his tongue. Reports claimed she'd been duped. Trial in Billings next month. Likely 15 years. 15 years, Luke would be near 50 on release if prison didn't kill him. Will you testify? If needed. Garrett tipped his hat. You're a charitable soul, Mrs. Hayes. Alone, she sobbed. Charitable? If he only knew. The trial drew crowds to Billings. Eleanor sat veiled in black, hiding sobs. Luke stood chained, unbowed. Testifying, she recited the fabrication. He posed as a lost trapper. I offered aid, nothing more. She avoided his gaze, the betrayal stabbing deep. The defense painted Luke as desperate, but Billings's death loomed Larhea with kin left widowed. Sentence: 15 years at Montana Territorial Prison. Luke finally looked her wear resignation, but love unspoken. As guards led him, his lips mouthed, Thank you. The ensuing years dragged like Montana winters. Silver Creek, tame mines boomed. Rails arrived, saloons turned shops. Eleanor grayed, softened, but her heart stayed chained. She spurned suitors, a new preacher, the doctor, even the widowed Smithy proposing companionship. Still faithful to Samuel, she'd say. Truth. Her soul was in a cell 300 miles away. Monthly, she'd travel to Helena on errands, then detour to Deer Lodge. Never the prison-thatted spark gossip. Instead, via lawyer Mr. Langley, paid handsomely, Luke got books, blankets, and doctoring. Langley saw her as pious. He didn't know the truth. News trickled. Luke learned woodworking, read voraciously, and survived a shank fight with weeks in the hole. Each scrap was a treasure. Eleanor never wed. Her role shifting to town, matron teaching Bible class, nursing the ill, baking for fairs. Whispers of the Harlan scandal faded. She became the virtuous widow anew. Nights, she dreamed of his touch. She penned unsent letters, confessions, memories, vows stashed in a chest. My love, one read on his birthday. Prison may steal years, but not us. I trade this empty honor for your arms. Eleanor hit 60, then 65. Ick set in, vision blurred, but devotion endured. At 70, fearing death's approach, she ramped up efforts extra funds to Langley for appeals. Luke Harlan walked free from Montana Territorial Prison on a golden September day in 189,713 years served, shortened by conduct and anonymous petitions. At 48, silver-threaded hair, face etched by captivity, but eyes still fierce. Prison had honed him quieter, skilled in crafts, hopeful. Eleanor's gifts had sustained. Books with hidden notes in margins or scent on pages, wildflowers pressed. A guard, bribed, whispered of a lady who knows loyalty. He knew. Silver Creek had modernized electric lights, automobiles rumbling streets. Her cabin? Sold to a young couple with kids, tumbling where he'd split wood. The wife eyed his weathered look warily. "Pardon, my former owner, Eleanor Hayes?" Sympathy softened her. Past last fall consumption, buried up the hill by the chapel. At her grave, autumn leaves swirled as the sun dipped. Stone read, Eleanor Hayes, 1827 to 1896. Cherished by those who saw her spirit. Beneath, a faded envelope for Luke. Inside, "Darling, I held on as long as fate allowed. You taught this weary heart to beat again, until eternity unites us, without bars or judgment. Eternally yours, Eleanor." Luke knelt, tears carving paths down his cheeks. Some bonds defy even the grave love's ultimate victory. What do you think in love conquer society's chains? Or was Eleanor foolish to risk it all? Share your stance in the comments below. Do you side with her heart or the town's judgment? Let's debate.